So, I mean, with that marketplace summary, right, you can imagine, as Brian noted, it's not something of which is showing improvement. The challenges in the market are continuing to be present. And that's the purpose of the call today, obviously, as we'll eventually get into our safety and loss control team and their capabilities. But just to kind of highlight, what was said. I mean, obviously, we've touched upon the auto liability issues here, but I think, what one of the newer buzz terms out there right now is what's going on the cargo side, and strategic theft. We're seeing a lot of that, now come into play. And it's really waking up, the cargo insurers on that front. And it's certainly something for an insurer to be aware of because ultimately, a lot of those cargo forms are done on, manuscript forms. They're in an ENS placement. They can change quickly. And you don't know what's on there. Your broker may not know that's on there either, which can be a scary proposition, And so these are, we're referring to it really as theft and deceit type fraud claims where we're having, bad actors, portray themselves as an active motor carrier showing up in shipyards and hijacking freight. And whether they, were able to hack into that shipper's, system to know what time that freight was being delivered, at what time to know when to be at the dock to get it, or if they've got a man on the inside, whatever the case may be. The problem is that we've got a situation where we've got a cargo insurer saying, well, it's not my problem, it's cyber. And we've got cyber saying it's not my problem, it's cargo. Right. And so now what you're seeing is a response in the space where before cargo insurers were kind of silent to the exposure, and now they're carving it out, saying, okay, you might carry $500,000 worth of cargo insurance, but we're going to sublimit any fraud and deceit type claims to 250. Or we're going to exclude it altogether if you're not doing X, Y, Z in terms of warranties on the freight. So that's something of which right now is important to be paying attention to. I mean, there was a statistic where cargo claims just in the past year up 34%, right? And so that was from CargoNet. It's a situation where cargo thefts continuing to rise as a result of, I think it's really the result of this fact that this is a highly transactional industry. And people aren't able to keep up sometimes with the technology that cyber criminals or just criminals are able to portray in the market. So we're having a lot of theft on that front, and the insurance carriers are becoming wise to it and limiting their coverage. So that's a discussion point for you and your broker to say, talk to me about these types of losses and how I'm adequately covered. In addition to, from a safety and loss control perspective, looking at your practices that you have in place to safeguard yourself against those types of risks. As we've talked about, before, or on the last slide, underwriting scrutiny continues to intensify, and so that's part of the nature of this discussion today is, how do you present yourself well in a hard market? It's a situation where not only are the auto insurers underwriting your file for primary auto, but so too are the excess carriers, as Brian alluded to. I mean, they're looking at your fleet, basically in the same capacity of underwriting questions as the primary auto insurer would, because we're having more claims penetrate the excess layer than ever before. So it's important to be paying attention to, how you're presenting yourself to the underwriter in advance of even getting to that submission point. We've got fewer insurers in the marketplace, as we've touched upon, which is, reducing competition, in terms of options that are available. Some particular nuances of transportation are more difficult than others. The final mile space is a very challenging placement, particularly those that are what we would call hybrid style risks, where they have asset operations plus non-asset operations, all flowing through the same entity. That's a very challenging placement. And premiums, as a result of this, lack of capacity continue to increase, to try to keep up with, the loss performance within this segment. And it's not slowing down. It's not a situation where we see good coming on the horizon. I don't think that's going to happen until there's unfortunately some form of tort reform. So, putting together some, action plans, to put better safety and loss control provisions in place for both asset and non-asset operations parts of your business is the name of the game right now. In addition to, you're seeing more carriers want to take on risks with higher retention, higher deductibles in order to offset rate increases. Well, if you're going to do that, then obviously, safety and loss control has to trump sales. I think we've seen that run for a long time where sales wins, right? We want to push that business through and just get it done, whatever it takes, but it can't be at the, result of lesser safety performance anymore, right? It's just becoming too challenging of a market to operate in that capacity.